So I was asked to give my opinion of the Whale starring Brendan Fraser, the most recent Darren Aronofsky film, because I mentioned on here that I went to see it in the theater recently. So the Whale, if you're coming to this, you probably already know about it, but simply put, the movie is about a morbidly obese man who is on the verge of death, who is willfully and intentionally eating himself to death, and he is hoping to set things right with his teenage daughter before he dies. He left his family. He left his wife and daughter years prior to the events of the film because he wanted to enter into a gay relationship with one of his students. He's an English lit teacher. Wanted to enter into a gay relationship with one of his students. She has never forgiven him for that. And so the film revolves around him trying to make things right with her. So that's the setup. And understand, I am a pretty big Darren Aronofsky fan. I've seen just about everything he's ever done. In fact, I think the only one I haven't seen is Noah, and I need to get on that and correct it. But anyway, I have always been a fan of his work, and I've always wanted to see one of his films in the theater. I still had not previously done that. And, when I say I want to see one of his films in the theater, I'm thinking of things like The Fountain, for example, which is an absolutely beautiful movie. And one of the things that's really appealing about his films is that he prefers to use only on-camera practical special effects. He does not like CGI at all. And I think, if the Marvel movies are proof that CGI is ruining movies and ruining Hollywood, and we really do need to see a return of good practical special effects, if only for the soulfulness of it and that sort of thing. And so, you look at a movie like The Fountain, and if you've seen it, there are these very heavenly, outer space, nebula sort of things, and heavenly spiritual vistas of color and fluidic color surrounding people and everything. And the way that was not done with CGI. That was done by filling petri dishes with colored oils and moving them around in front of a camera while beaming light through the petri dish. Which is such a cool way to get these on-camera special effects, and I love stuff like that. So I was really hoping I would get to see something like that in the theater. If nothing else, it's like a roller coaster. If you get on a roller coaster, you can't get off till it's over. And I wanted that experience of being because his movies are so intense, being strapped into the chair, Clockwork Orange style. Taking it all in and really absorbing the intensity of it. And sadly, this was probably for me his most lightweight, melodramatic, flat, middle of the road, unsatisfying film of his that I've ever seen. And that's not to say there's nothing to like about it. I do think Brendan Fraser plays the main character well, and that's the main thing that people have been saying is, if nothing else, go see it for the performance, And he carries now be warned, the whale does get a nude scene. So I don't know if it's technically nudity though, because it's a bodysuit. So, but the character is seen nude, and it's not pleasant. And he plays the character well, and we really do, especially in the physicality of it. And Brendan Fraser's always been a good actor for physical comedy and that sort of thing. But here we see him playing it towards a more, that same physicality towards a more serious thing, or more serious goal. And he really does get the physicality of it across nicely, and you really do feel how much pain this guy is in, how difficult it is for him to move. All of the nonverbal information is really well conveyed. So how self-conscious he is, how embarrassed he is, how despairing he is, all of that. And then on top of that, the character, what's really bittersweet, what's really heartbreaking about this character is, you do get that he's a genuinely likable person, and that he's that under normal circumstances he would be a guy you would want to have in your life, and that sort of thing. So there's a lot there. That said, I don't know that I would call it the revolutionary, career defining, Oscar worthy performance that everyone's saying it is. It's really just, Brendan Fraser made his career, spent the halcyon days of his career playing, doing comedies and pulp action pictures. He did not really do any serious parts in his heyday. So it is interesting and cool to see that he can handle himself this way. But that said, those limited compliments aside, the overall movie really felt very flat, especially in regards to, or in comparison to Darren Aronofsky's other films. First and foremost, this was based on a play, and because it was based on a play, the whole thing takes place in and around his house, which pretty obviously is derived from the fact that the play is all done on one set. But the whole thing takes place in and around his house, and as such, there's an extremely limited color palette, which is unfortunate because Darren Aronofsky does color really well, and he has, it's kind of that cascade from light blue to dark blue into brown is kind of the color palette we have, which is a very nautical kind of color palette, and Brendan Fraser's character is often seen wearing blue, denim colors and that denims and that sort of thing. So there's obviously a nautical element to it, but it's still not as visually engaging as his other stuff. But more importantly, more to the point about it being based on a play, the thing is, as I was watching this, I was thinking about it. It comes off extremely melodramatic. Everybody is delivering these lines where they are doing these performances where it feels like every line that they say goes from 0 to 10 instantly. Like there's not a lot of dynamic range. They're talking, then they're shouting, talking, and then they're shouting. It feels like everybody is playing to these very weird beats where they have to make wide, dramatic, angry gestures at very specific points. And you start to realize that because this is based on a play works differently. If you're seeing live theater works very differently because it has to follow very specific beats. Where people have to cheat out to the audience, they have to convey these larger emotions to the audience in a way that does not come off well on the big screen, where smaller, the camera is up close, it's more intimate, and it has to, they can convey smaller, more conversational emotions and that sort of thing. And so because of that, it just doesn't feel right. It feels very melodramatic and shallow because the actors are playing to these big, large beats that would make sense. It would not feel melodramatic if you saw this performed as a play. If you saw this performed as a play where you feel like, you have the added immediacy of being live in the room with the actors as this is going on, then those sudden bursts of big emotion and everything that just instantly 0 to 60 kind of vibe, then it makes sense. Then it starts to make sense why people would carry on that way, because they're playing to an actual room of people. But here where the fourth wall is solid, if you will, there's no audience that's being turned to, that the actors are cheating out to. it just comes off as very very one-dimensional, and honestly, because of that, I did not feel like I was watching a Darren Aronofsky movie. Really, throughout this whole thing, I felt like I was watching an M. Night Shyamalan movie. And that kept coming up to mind. Now, understand something. I don't mean that necessarily as a put down, because I actually really like M. Night Shyamalan. I've liked probably a lot more of his movies than most people do. Like, a lot of people, for some reason, really hated The Village. I loved The Village. I don't understand why people hated that movie so much. But but in my mind, like M. Night Shyamalan, when he's good, when he's on point, he does phenomenal movies. Then you get a movie like Split or The Sixth Sense or Signs or Unbreakable. You get these really cool movies. And when he's off his game, when he's bad, it's so ridiculously, it's one of those things where it just becomes so bad it's good. You enjoy it, the surreal campiness of it and that sort of thing. And I think the only M. Night Shyamalan movie I flat out have not enjoyed in either dimension was The Happening. I thought that was just completely phoned in. But I really did, anyway, bring it back. The reason I say that is because M. Night Shyamalan's movies do have this thing that's infuriating to me, even as a fan, which is, if you go see an M. Night Shyamalan movie, you are sold on the thing in the movie. There's a cool concept in the movie that is that's going to be explored. That's what you want to find out about. You want to find out what's going on with this cool thing that's happening. And so you have a movie like Unbreakable, where Bruce Willis is invulnerable, is invincible, can't be injured. What a cool idea! Let's explore that. And what happens is it ends up being even though, again, I like these movies, but it ends up being a sensitive character study in the importance of maintaining a strong nuclear family. And you have a movie like Signs, where it's like, great, it's an alien invasion movie, and it's a throwback to classic 50s alien invasion movies, and there's all of these homages to Hitchcock and things like that too. And so you want to go find out about the aliens and see all the cool alien stuff and everything. And then you see the movie, and it turns out it's a sensitive, intimate character study about the importance of maintaining a strong nuclear family. And over again, he does that, where he sells you on the thing, and then when you come in to see go to the movie to see the thing, what this movie is really about is the importance of a strong nuclear family, or whatever relationships he's trying to explore in the film. And that's what this felt like, where you go into it wanting to see the whale, wanting to see this just insanely morbidly obese man that's eating himself to death and everything about that, and you want to really explore that, but really it doesn't explore that so much as it tries to tell you that your family and friends are really important, and and that's what matters. And it really, the best comparison I would make is to a movie like The Wrestler, where the Wrestler, where which is another Darren Aronofsky movie, where Mickey Rourke is playing this has been professional wrestler from the 80s, and that is slowly destroying himself, as characters are wont to do in Darren Aronofsky films. But he's slowly destroying himself and slowly ruining his life, and making these failed efforts to save himself before ultimately doing himself in. And or we're led to think, I know it ends on an unresolved note, but anyway, we're led to assume he does himself in. And in that, it's a deeply insular film about this character, and he has all of these relationships that are really treated as external to the interior world that he occupies. So, like, one of the main one of the main relationships that he has in that movie is with a stripper a stripper who's a single mom that's played by Marissa Tomei. And you never feel like their relationship develops and it's this doomed tragic romance, but you never feel like you were duped into, you were brought in on the basis of seeing a movie about this character only to be duped into getting, an important, valuable lesson in maintaining a strong family unit or something like that. It's not this relationship over here is a supporting aspect of the character study, not the point of it, the actual point of it. And that's what this movie felt like. It did not have that insular Darren Aronofsky feel where you just feel like you are trapped inside this person's psyche. Look at, again, Requiem for a Dream, look at Black Swan, that kind of thing where you feel claustrophobically trapped inside of this character. You really don't get that in this. It spends way too much time setting up or I wouldn't say way too much time, but it focuses at different points on the characters external to him, and as a result, it does not feel like a Darren Aronofsky film. And what's interesting is, again, going back to the idea of it being based on a play, you can tell where they tried to shoehorn in some of those typical Darren Aronofsky beats, which is like there's this montage scene where they're doing like these fast cuts, like almost a Dogma 95 kind of thing, where they're doing these really fast cuts of a montage where he's trying to eat himself to death. Like he's been told he has less than a week to live, and he ends up throwing this kind of horrific tantrum where he tries to, while he's alone in his apartment, tries to eat himself to death. And he uses one of the foods he's gorging himself on is a jar of Welch's grape jam, and that's my brand. That's the jam that I eat. Like, really, you had to anyway, you had to ruin that one for me. But yeah, he's trying to just like scarf down and stuff his face and everything. And, and then you see like this really dramatic vomiting and everything. And it really doesn't, it's not that impactful. It's like trying to do a serious version of the World's Fattest Man sketch from Monty Python Meaning of Life. So it didn't have that radical, disturbing self-destruction thing that you would get in like a Requiem for a Dream or The Wrestler or something like that. And so, and then finally, I hate to say it, but it ends on a hopeful note. And that's not Darren Aronofsky. For Darren Aronofsky, you want miserable, painful self-destruction. And anyways, so bringing it back around to the M. Night Shyamalan comparison, though, one of the things it tried way too hard to do one of the things it did was try to have this sort of everything happens for a reason moral to it. And that was one of the things that was, as much as I loved Signs and as much as I thought Signs was a cool movie, that was one of the things that aggravated me about Signs is it tries the moral of the M. Night Shyamalan movie Signs. The moral is that everything happens for a reason, and there is a larger structure to the universe, and that faith is a good thing to have. Well, I think that those are all good lessons, but they come off a little bit ham-fisted in Signs, because there's this scene in Signs or there's this theme in the movie Signs where, as the aliens are invading, one of the little boys in the little boy in the family has this thing where he's always drinking half glasses of water and glasses of water down to half and leaving them sitting all over the house. And so at the end, when the Joaquin Phoenix character has to square off against one of the aliens, it turns out the alien is vulnerable to water, and there's glasses of water everywhere, and so he's able to, fight the alien. And so it's like this thing of, oh, see, there was a reason for that. Everything happens for a reason. And it just doesn't, it feels a little too easy and a little too obvious. And that happened here with the daughter character, where throughout the script, I mean, throughout the movie, she's doing all of these horrible, malicious, malevolent things that seem horrible and malicious and malevolent throughout the whole film. And then at the very end, we see all of the things she was doing come together in this way that where it's like, oh, everything's justified. Oh, this makes sense. Now we understand why she was doing what she was doing. Everything happens for a reason. And when it's done that obviously and that heavy-handed, the message you're trying to get across just feels syrupy, sweet, saccharine, ridiculous, over the top. And so it didn't work on that level. There were some attempts at spirituality and a spiritual dialogue around the Christian faith that was almost interesting, but they really didn't do very much with it, which is a shame. But then one thing for me personally is the soundtrack to this was not done by Angelo Badalamenti. And I'm sorry, but there are certain directors that are inextricably linked with certain soundtrack composers, so much so that when it's not that composer, you really notice a difference in the tone of the film. And so, Steven Spielberg is inextricably linked with John Williams. David Lynch is inextricably linked with Angelo Badalamenti. And by the same token, Darren Aronofsky is inextricably linked with Clint Mansell. And so I really, it was not a bad soundtrack, and I liked some of the artistry of it, where they tried to, through the acoustic sculpting of the instruments and the arrangements, tried to give it this kind of wind noises and sounds of the beach and and waterfront and that sort of thing. I like that, but it's just not Clint Mansell. And it's just John Lennon without Paul McCartney sounds very different, that sort of thing. And I say that particularly because one of my favorite things about Darren Aronofsky movies has always been the Clint Mansell soundtrack. And like those of you out there who have been listening to my most recent solo album, Nowhere Land, will hear a direct, the direct influence of Darren Aronofsky's work with the Kronos Quartet, the string quartet, the Kronos Quartet. His collaboration with them for Requiem for a Dream was a huge influence on me for the string arrangements on that album, especially the way they incorporate with the interact with the rock band instruments and that sort of thing. All of that huge. So I love Clint Mansell. He's one of my favorite soundtrack composers. And I would say probably The Fountain is probably my favorite soundtrack of his, and The Fountain is probably my favorite Darren Aronofsky movie. And without him doing the soundtrack, it is just a very, very different feeling. He is very noticeable in his absence. And so that was just inexcusable for me. So everybody's been talking about the Brendan Fraser performance, that this is the performance of his career and all of that stuff. I was not. It was good. He does a good job of. He does a good job of conveying this. What he does is he conveys that this character is actually a likable person underneath it all. Literally, underneath it all, he's actually a likable person. He's someone you would want to have as your friend. He's someone that people are going to miss, and that sort of thing. And that comes across, I don't know if I'd call it a virtuoso, career-defying performance, as much as just a good performance. What it does, though, is it conveys, Brendan Fraser spent the halcyon days of his career, the golden years of it, or the best years of his career, playing the majority of his career, I guess is just the best way to say it, but playing either comedic characters like George of the Jungle or Airheads, Monkey Bone, things like that, or playing action heroes like in The Mummy and that sort of thing. And so he's never been given an opportunity to show a real depth as an actor. And this is a movie that shows, yes, he can work as a serious dramatic actor, and I'd like to see him do more of that. But I don't know that it's like the revolutionary magnum opus performance that everyone's saying it is. I feel like he has better in him. Um, and finally, one thing, by the way, is there. I don't want to give too much away, but there is a there's a character thread in the movie. The character that is his best friend is this woman who's his best friend, and she's his best friend, and she's a nurse, so she can help him when he's having all of his. He refuses to go to the hospital, but he's got her, so she can help him when he's um, having bad episodes and everything. And I saw that, and I immediately imagined the Screen Rant guys, a very convenient occurrence or something like that, making fun of that. But anyway, her thread, she's his best friend. Their thread is never resolved really properly, and she is ultimately treated horribly by him in the movie in a way that never gets closure. And I really didn't like that, especially when we're supposed to feel for this guy, we're supposed to be caring about this guy and everything. It's just a big empty spot that they never gave that character relationship closure. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the whale. Um, Certainly. Oh, and one other thing that's curious to me. Um, there in all of these foods that he's eating, there are all of these different food product placements. Like he's constantly drinking Pepsi. I said the thing earlier about the Welch's grape jam. There's and all of these different things, all these different product placements, and I'm thinking, well, first of all, did they pitch that? Did they sell those product placements to help finance the movie? I wonder about that, and if the corporations, the corporate entities that they reached out to really are so soulless that they would want that context around their product. But at the same time, even if they didn't sell that for corporate sponsorship, you still have to get permission to use those corporate logos and things in movies. So they had to have reached out and gotten permission from all these people, and it just makes you think, like, how did they pitch that to them? What were the companies thinking? And I noticed very tellingly that one of the recurring themes or recurring events in the film is that the whale, the main character, gets he orders a new pizza. He orders pizza every day, and that's one of the things that he does. And the pizza, I didn't recognize the brand of pizza that's being brought to him. I don't know. Maybe it could be like a smaller chain that I'm not aware of or something, but I don't think it was an actual brand of pizza. And I thought that was funny. It's like, no, I don't think anybody wanted to be the pizza that kills the whale in this movie. So anyway, those are my thoughts about it. If you're a Darren Aronofsky aficionado and you want to see everything he's done, I check it out. It's worth a look. But as far as something that's really, if you're really going to appeal to a hardcore Darren Aronofsky fan that's going to have all of those elements that you look for in one of his movies, this is not that. It's very lightweight. It comes off very, ironically, very melodramatic and very TV movie of the week. And I was expecting a very intense experience that I really didn't get. There were some very bittersweet, very sad moments in it. There were some very disgusting moments. He does have a nude scene at one point, although I don't know if it qualifies as a nude scene since it's a bodysuit, but an actual nude scene. But anyway, there were some moving, bittersweet moments, some very sad moments, but I was expecting something that was just going to stay with me for days. Like when I saw Requiem for a Dream for the first time, the feeling that I got from that movie just stayed with me for probably about a week after. Just that that horrifically nihilistic, empty feeling that movie leaves you with. I was expecting it to haunt me. It just haunted me for weeks, and I was expecting that that's what this movie would do. It really didn't do that. It was like a more lightweight version of Leaving Las Vegas with food instead of booze. I mean, that was basically it. And so, yeah, I would say if you've never seen a Darren Aronofsky movie, this is not where to start. Start with Requiem for a Dream, start with Black Swan, start with The Fountain. Those are probably my three favorites by him. So, anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments.